From the Center for Agricultural Profitability at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, this is Nebraska Farmcast. I'm Ryan Evans. As farmers know, impressive yields at harvest don't mean a lot if the cost to grow the crop outweighs the price at marketing time. On this episode, we dive into the importance of calculating break-even prices and yields to improve profitability. From understanding how much yield you need to cover your costs to incorporating things like family living expenses and opportunity costs, there are so many considerations to be made. Enterprise budgeting to understand those expenses and determine break-even prices and yields can be time-consuming, but we'll also talk about how UNL's Ag Budget Calculator program can help streamline that process. I'm glad to be joined again by Larry Van Tassell, professor in the Department of Agricultural Economics here at UNL and director of the Center for Agricultural Profitability. He's just published a new article about using break-even analysis to make better decisions, and you can find that on our center's website at cap.unl.edu. Hey, Larry, thanks for joining me.
My pleasure, Ryan.
So I mentioned some benefits in the opening there, but why is using break-even analysis so critical in agriculture?
Well, decision-making in agriculture is difficult because of the uncertainties that are involved in both the production process, or the yield, and the marketing, or the output price. If a producer does not understand what it costs to produce their crop, this third unknown of not knowing cost really clouds the decision-making to where it only becomes a hope process. In other words, I hope to cover my costs with the price I contract my crop for, or I hope I can get enough yield to justify putting extra fertilizer on my crop. So knowing the cost of production provides information that decisions can be based on. For example, if you know your costs of production are $500 per acre and your anticipated wheat yield is 80 bushels per acre, a break-even price of $6.25 can be determined by simply dividing the $500 by the 80 bushel yield. The decision maker then has a number to shoot for in his or her marketing plan that is required to cover the costs of production. While uncertainty still exists in the production process, the producer has a number to base their decision on rather than just hoping they can cover costs.
So you ran through it there, but just to reiterate, because it is such a simple calculation to make, when you discuss break-even prices and break-even yields in your article, those formulas are in the article, so we encourage people to check that out on cap.unl.edu. But again, very simple. So to obtain break-even price per acre, take your total cost per acre, divide that number by your expected yield per acre for that enterprise, and then on the other side, to determine break-even yield, take your total cost per acre and divide by the expected price per acre.
That's correct.
So can you talk about the importance of examining break-evens for both total operating costs and then total economic costs and the difference between those?
Happy to, Ryan. Operating costs are typically the cash costs the operator must encumber to produce the crop, such as the cost of fertilizer, the cost of fuel, or the cost of hired labor. If these cash costs can be covered, the production process should occur that year. Using an example from the Nebraska crop budgets for an irrigated wheat farm in the Nebraska Panhandle, the anticipated operating costs are $491 per acre, and the projected yield is 90 bushel per acre. So dividing the $491 in operating costs by 90 bushel, a break-even price of $5.46 is obtained. That is the price the wheat must be contracted or sold for in order to cover all operating costs. Conversely, if the wheat is contracted for $9 per bushel, the operating cost of $491 can be divided by the $9 per bushel to obtain a break-even yield of almost 55 bushels per acre to cover the operating cost. So given the contracted price, the producer has a yield of nearly 55 bushel that needs to be obtained to cover operating. By adding non-cash costs such as depreciation, return on invested capital, and operating labor, total economic costs can be obtained. These are the costs that need to be met over the long term to remain in business. In our wheat example, total economic costs are $658, giving a break-even price of $7.32 and a break-even yield of 73 bushels. Knowing the break-even yield also provides anticipated flexibility in the marketing plan, as the break-even amount can be sold to cover costs, and the producer can then use production over that to take additional price risk on if they so desire.
And can you explain how these break-even concepts and analysis, how it can be used to make decisions about individual inputs like nitrogen or fertilizer, for instance?
Sure. If a producer knew exactly how a crop would respond to a certain level of fertilizer application, it would be a simple process to determine how much fertilizer to apply in order to maximize profit. One would just keep applying fertilizer until the value of the additional yield equals the cost of the additional fertilizer. But because most producers don't have that production information, the next best alternative is to determine, at a given price, what yield would be required to make the cost of the additional fertilizer pay. The break-even process allows us to obtain that information. By dividing the cost of the additional pounds of fertilizer by the anticipated price of the crop per bushel, the number of bushels of additional crop required to pay for the added fertilizer can be obtained. For example, if nitrogen is priced at $1 per pound and wheat was contracted for $9 per bushel, 2.8 bushels per acre must be obtained to pay for the application of an additional 25 pounds of fertilizer. The manager can then make a better decision knowing what the increase in yield will have to be.
And we've been talking about really the simple nature and how easy it is to make these calculations, but you do need to have that enterprise information, all the information you can really about the enterprise and all of your costs that go into each enterprise. So that can take a lot of time just creating those budgets. But of course, here in the Center for Ag Profitability at Nebraska, we've developed the free online Ag Budget Calculator program, which we often refer to as ABC. And you've worked closely with that since it was conceptualized. So how does ABC help to make the budgeting process easier and then in turn help with break-even analysis?
Well, the free online ABC program guides the user through the enterprise budgeting process. The program prompts the user for the required data and does all the required calculations. Once the enterprise budgets are completed, there are a variety of decision assistance tools available at the click of a mouse. This includes break-even costs and yields, and the ability to choose any input and see how sensitive net returns are to changes in input prices. The beauty of using the ABC program is that once the enterprise budgets have been developed, they can be copied and modified for use in future years.
Before we go, do you have any other advice for producers regarding the use of enterprise budgeting and break-even analysis in their management decision-making and in making their marketing plans?
While enterprise budgeting and break-even analysis do not provide a crystal ball into the future, they do provide valuable information upon which a farm or ranch manager can base decisions. Given the cost of inputs and the value of the output, it can be pretty scary making decisions without knowing costs and break-even prices and yields that will cover those costs.
Great. Well, that's Larry Van Tassell, professor in the Department of Agricultural Economics here at UNL and director of our Center for Agricultural Profitability. You can find out more about break-even analysis and how it's calculated, as well as tools available to assist in the process in his new article up on our website right now at cap.unl.edu. It's also in the description on this podcast. Larry, thanks for joining me.
My pleasure, Ryan. Thanks for hosting us today.
Nebraska Farmcast is a production of the Center for Agricultural Profitability at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. For the latest research-based information and education resources to manage your farm or ranch operation, visit our website at cap.unl.edu. That's cap.unl.edu.